Imagine a land not yet born, a place where ice has just retreated. This was the Netherlands at the end of the last ice age, around 11,000 years ago. The landscape was a vast, wet and shifting tapestry of marshes, peat bogs and meandering rivers. The Rhine, Meuse and Scheldt rivers flowed slowly toward the North Sea, depositing silt and creating a low-lying delta that was constantly changing. This was not an easy place to live. It was a world of water, where the line between land and sea was blurry and unpredictable. Hunter-gatherers roamed these lands, following herds of reindeer and other game across the soggy tundra. They left behind simple stone tools, the first faint whispers of human presence in a world dominated by nature's raw power. These early inhabitants were masters of adaptation. They understood the rhythms of the water and the seasons, moving with the floods and finding sustenance in the rich wetlands. They fished in the abundant streams, hunted waterfowl in the marshes, and gathered edible plants from the boggy ground. Their lives were a constant negotiation with the environment. Survival depended on reading the signs of the landscape, knowing when the rivers would swell and where to find high ground. It was a tough existence, but it forged a deep connection between the people and their watery home. This relationship, born of necessity, would become the defining characteristic of the Dutch people for millennia to come. It was the first chapter in a long story of human ingenuity against the odds. The arrival of farming around 5000 BC marked a significant turning point. People began to settle down, clearing small patches of forest on the slightly higher ground to cultivate crops and raise livestock. This was a radical shift from the nomadic lifestyle of their ancestors. Settling meant committing to a piece of land, and in the Netherlands that meant committing to a constant battle with water. They built their first homes on natural rises in the terrain, small islands of stability in a sea of mud. These early farmers were pioneers, learning through trial and error how to drain small plots of land and protect their precious crops from the seasonal floods that threatened to wash everything away. It was a slow, painstaking process that required immense patience and a communal spirit. Over time, these scattered farming communities grew. They were joined by new groups of people migrating from the east, including Celtic and Germanic tribes who brought their own cultures and technologies. Among these newcomers were the Frisians, who settled along the northern coast, and the Batavians, who made their home in the river delta. These tribes were not just passing through, they were putting down roots in this challenging environment. They learned to live with the constant threat of the North Sea, which could surge inland during powerful storms, and the rivers, which could overflow their banks without warning. Their resilience and their growing understanding of the land laid the foundation for the unique civilization that would one day emerge from these marshes and become the Netherlands. The early tribes, especially the Frisians living along the wild North Sea coast, developed a brilliant solution to the relentless threat of flooding. They began to build artificial hills known as turpen. These were man-made mounds of earth and refuse, painstakingly constructed over generations. A family would build their farmhouse on a small mound, and as the community grew, the mound would be expanded, layer by layer, until it became a substantial hill capable of protecting an entire village from the highest storm surges. These turpen were more than just feats of engineering. They were symbols of community and perseverance. They represented a collective decision to stand firm against the sea, to carve out a permanent home in a place that seemed determined to remain wild and uninhabitable. This struggle against the water became the central organizing principle of life. It required cooperation on a massive scale. To protect their fields and homes, communities had to work together to build the first dikes, long earthen walls designed to hold back the sea and control the rivers. This was not a task for individuals or single families. It demanded shared labor, planning, and a common purpose. The Dutch saying, "God created the world, but the Dutch created the Netherlands," has its roots in this early back-breaking work. They were literally sculpting their own country from the mud, pushing back the water inch by inch, polder by polder. This constant shared struggle forged a unique social fabric, one based on practicality, mutual dependence, and a stubborn refusal to surrender. Into this world of mud wrestlers and dike builders came the Romans, around 57 BC. Led by Julius Caesar, the powerful Roman legions marched north, seeking to expand their empire to the Rhine River. They encountered a land and a people unlike any they had known. The Romans were masters of stone roads and grand cities, but here they found a soggy, defiant landscape. They recognized the strategic importance of the river delta and established forts and towns, bringing with them their advanced engineering, laws, and written language. The Romans built bridges, canals, and roads, imposing a new kind of order on the wild terrain. For the local tribes, this was a period of immense change and challenge, introducing them to a global power. The relationship between the local tribes and the Romans was complex. The Batavians, known for their fierce fighting skills, became valuable allies, serving as elite soldiers in the Roman army. Yet, Roman rule was not always welcome. In 69 AD, the Batavians, led by their chieftain Gaius Julius Civilis, rose up in a dramatic revolt against the empire. Although the rebellion was eventually suppressed, it became a powerful symbol of Dutch independence and defiance, a story that would be told and retold for centuries. The Roman presence lasted for about 400 years, and it left a lasting mark. It connected the region to the wider European world, introduced new ideas, and ultimately reinforced the unique identity of the people who called this watery frontier home. After the Roman Empire crumbled in the 5th century, the Netherlands entered a period of great change and uncertainty, often called the Dark Ages. The stability and infrastructure the Romans had provided disappeared, and the region fragmented into smaller territories ruled by local chieftains and Frankish kings. Yet the lessons of the past were not forgotten. The struggle against the water continued, and in many ways, it intensified. Without a central authority, local communities had to rely on themselves more than ever. They formed water boards, or waterskappen, some of the oldest democratic institutions in the country. These boards were responsible for maintaining the dikes, dunes, and canals, a life-or-death task that required everyone's participation and investment. This was grassroots democracy born from a shared need to survive. During this time, trade began to re-emerge as a powerful force. The Frisians, with their coastal location and shipbuilding skills, became dominant traders across the North Sea, connecting the region with Scandinavia and England. Small trading posts, often located at the mouths of rivers or in protected harbors, started to grow into bustling towns. Places like Dorestad became major commercial hubs, centers of wealth and exchange. This commercial spirit was another key ingredient in the developing Dutch character. They were not just farmers and fighters, they were becoming merchants, sailors, and entrepreneurs. The sea, once only an enemy to be held back, was now also a highway to prosperity, a vast network of opportunity waiting to be explored. By the High Middle Ages, from the 11th to the 13th centuries, a network of prosperous cities had begun to dot the Dutch landscape. Utrecht, with its powerful bishop, became a major religious and political center. In the coastal provinces of Holland and Zeeland, cities like Dordrecht, Leiden, and Haarlem grew rich from fishing, brewing, and the cloth trade. To the east, cities such as Deventer and Kampen joined the Hanseatic League, a powerful confederation of merchant guilds and market towns that dominated trade across northern Europe. This league connected the Dutch cities to a vast economic network stretching from London to Novgorod, bringing immense wealth and cultural exchange to the region. The Dutch were becoming key players on the European stage. This urban growth and commercial success fostered a new sense of identity. People began to see themselves not just as residents of a village or subjects of a local lord, but as citizens of a town, with shared rights and responsibilities. The cities fought for and won charters from the feudal nobility, granting them a degree of self-governance and legal autonomy. This created a society where power was more distributed, where the merchant class had a strong voice, and where practical solutions were valued over rigid hierarchies. A distinctly Dutch culture was taking shape, pragmatic, independent, urban, and deeply connected to both the challenges of the water and the opportunities of the wider world. It was a culture built not by kings, but by communities. The 15th and 16th centuries saw the Low Countries, including the Netherlands, fall under the control of powerful foreign rulers. First came the Dukes of Burgundy, who united the various provinces under a single administration, creating a wealthy and culturally vibrant court. This period saw a flourishing of the arts, with painters like Jan van Eyck achieving international fame. Following the Burgundians, the territories passed into the hands of the Spanish Habsburg dynasty through marriage and inheritance. Emperor Charles V, and later his son King Philip II of Spain, ruled over a vast empire. For a time, the Dutch cities prospered under this stable rule, their ports and markets bustling with trade from across the globe. Antwerp, in particular, became the financial capital of Northern Europe. However, tensions began to boil beneath the surface. The Dutch prized their long-held traditions of local autonomy and self-governance, which clashed with the Habsburgs' desire for centralized, absolute power. Furthermore, a powerful religious movement, the Protestant Reformation, was sweeping across Europe. The teachings of reformers like Martin Luther and John Calvin found fertile ground in the independent-minded cities of the Netherlands. The staunchly Catholic King Philip II saw this as heresy and responded with brutal repression, sending the Duke of Alba and his armies to crush the Protestant movement and enforce Spanish authority. This heavy-handed approach, combined with crippling taxes, ignited a firestorm of resentment and resistance among the Dutch people. This simmering conflict exploded into open rebellion in 1568, marking the beginning of the 80 Years' War. It was a long and brutal struggle for independence, a fight for both religious freedom and political liberty. Led by the charismatic nobleman William of Orange, also known as William the Silent, the Dutch rebels fought a desperate war against the mightiest empire in the world. They used their knowledge of the water to their advantage, famously flooding the land to halt the advance of Spanish armies. In 1581, the northern provinces took a radical step, formally declaring their independence from the Spanish king in a document called the Act of Abjuration. This was a revolutionary declaration, a bold assertion that a ruler who oppressed his subjects had forfeited his right to rule. Against all odds, the 7 northern provinces succeeded in winning their freedom, forming a new and unique nation, the Dutch Republic. This new state was unlike any other in Europe. It had no king. Instead, it was a confederation of provinces governed by a wealthy merchant class. This political freedom, combined with religious tolerance, unleashed an unprecedented burst of energy and creativity. The 17th century became the Dutch Golden Age. Amsterdam replaced Antwerp as the center of world trade, and the Dutch East India Company, or VOC, built a global trading empire. Science and philosophy flourished with figures like Christian Huygens and Baruch Spinoza, while painters like Rembrandt and Vermeer captured the light and life of this confident new republic, creating masterpieces for the ages. The extraordinary success of the Dutch Golden Age could not last forever. By the early 18th century, the republic's dominance began to wane. The very sources of its strength started to become vulnerabilities. The immense wealth generated by trade created a small, entrenched class of powerful regent families who became more concerned with preserving their status than with innovation. This political stagnation, often referred to as the periwig period for the elaborate wigs worn by the elite, led to a decline in the nation's dynamism. Meanwhile, rival powers, particularly England and France, were growing stronger. A series of costly naval wars with England chipped away at Dutch maritime supremacy, disrupting trade routes and draining the treasury. The Republic was a small nation, and it struggled to compete with its larger, more centralized neighbors. Internally, the Republic was plagued by growing social and political divisions. The gap between the rich regents and the common people widened, leading to unrest. A political movement known as the Patriots emerged, inspired by the Enlightenment ideals spreading across Europe and the American Revolution. The Patriots called for democratic reforms, an end to the hereditary power of the House of Orange, and a revival of the Republic's former glory. Their ideas gained significant support, but they were ultimately crushed in 1787, when the Prussian army intervened on behalf of the established order. The internal strife left the country deeply divided and vulnerable to outside influence, setting the stage for a dramatic upheaval. That upheaval arrived with the French Revolution. In 1795, French revolutionary armies marched into the Netherlands, welcomed by the Dutch patriots who saw them as liberators. The old Dutch Republic was dissolved, and the Batavian Republic was established in its place, a client state modeled on revolutionary France. This marked a radical break with the past. The new republic introduced a centralized government, a new constitution, and principles of liberty and equality. However, this liberation came at a high price. The Dutch were forced to pay enormous sums to support the French war effort, and their trade was crippled by the British blockade, which was part of the wider Napoleonic Wars. The dream of a renewed republic quickly soured under the weight of French domination. The final chapter of this era came when Napoleon Bonaparte, now Emperor of France, decided to exert even more direct control. In 1806, he abolished the Batavian Republic and installed his brother, Louis Bonaparte, as the King of Holland. Louis surprisingly took his role seriously, trying to learn the Dutch language and acting in the interests of his new subjects, earning him the nickname Good King Louis. But his loyalty to the Dutch people angered Napoleon, who annexed the Netherlands directly into the French Empire in 1810. For a few years, the Netherlands ceased to exist as a separate nation. The Napoleonic era, though brief, had a profound impact, sweeping away old institutions and paving the way for the modern centralized state that would emerge after Napoleon's final defeat. After Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo in 1815, the great powers of Europe redrew the map of the continent at the Congress of Vienna. They decided to create a strong buffer state north of France, and so the United Kingdom of the Netherlands was born. This new kingdom brought together the northern provinces, the former Dutch Republic, and the southern provinces, what is now Belgium, under a single monarch, King William I of the House of Orange. For the first time, the Netherlands was a constitutional monarchy. King William was an energetic but autocratic ruler, eager to modernize his new kingdom. He invested heavily in infrastructure, digging new canals, building roads, and stimulating industry, earning him the nickname the Canal King. However, the union between North and South was fraught with problems from the very beginning. There were deep-seated differences in religion, language, and economic interests. The South was predominantly Catholic and French-speaking, with a burgeoning industrial economy, while the North was largely Protestant, Dutch-speaking, and focused on trade. The southern provinces felt that the king and the government unfairly favored the North. These tensions boiled over in 1830 when the Belgian Revolution erupted. After a brief conflict, the southern provinces broke away and established the independent Kingdom of Belgium. The Netherlands was once again a smaller nation, forced to redefine its place in Europe. With its European territory reduced, the Netherlands turned its focus more intensely toward its overseas colonies, particularly the Dutch East Indies, which is modern-day Indonesia. The 19th century saw the implementation of the cultivation system, a policy that forced Indonesian farmers to devote a large portion of their land to growing cash crops like coffee and sugar for the Dutch government. This system was brutally exploitative, but it generated enormous profits that funded industrialization back in the Netherlands and helped the Dutch economy recover. The wealth from the colonies financed the construction of railways and helped Dutch cities grow, but it was built on the suffering of colonial subjects. This period solidified the Netherlands' identity as a major colonial power, a reality with a complex and often painful legacy. The first half of the 20th century brought immense challenges. The Netherlands managed to remain neutral during World War I, but the conflict had a severe economic impact. The real devastation came in World War II. Despite declaring neutrality again, the country was invaded by Nazi Germany in May 1940. The brutal five-year occupation was a time of immense hardship, persecution, and resistance. The Dutch Jewish population was decimated in the Holocaust, and the country suffered a terrible famine during the Hunger Winter of 1944-45. Liberation in 1945 brought joy, but the nation was scarred and impoverished. The war shattered the old world and forced the Dutch to confront the immense task of rebuilding their country and their society from the ashes. The post-war period was a time of incredible transformation and renewal for the Netherlands. With the help of the Marshall Plan, the Dutch embarked on a massive rebuilding effort, repairing their shattered cities and infrastructure with characteristic determination. This period also marked the end of their colonial empire. In 1949, after a difficult and violent struggle, Indonesia formally gained its independence. The loss of its most valuable colony forced the Netherlands to reorient its economy and its identity. It shifted its focus toward Europe, becoming a founding member of what would eventually become the European Union. This pivot toward European cooperation and international trade laid the groundwork for the nation's remarkable economic recovery and future prosperity. The spirit of resilience was put to the ultimate test in 1953. A catastrophic flood, caused by a combination of a high spring tide and a severe storm, breached dikes in the southwest, inundating vast areas of land and claiming over 1,800 lives. This national trauma led to one of the most ambitious engineering projects in human history, the Delta Works. This massive system of dams, storm surge barriers, and dikes was designed to protect the country from the sea for generations to come. The Delta Works became a global symbol of Dutch water management expertise, a testament to their ability to turn disaster into an opportunity for innovation. This ongoing mastery of water remains central to the Dutch identity in an age of climate change and rising sea levels. As the economy boomed in the 1960s and 70s, Dutch society underwent a profound cultural revolution. The rigid social pillars of the past, which had organized society along religious and political lines, began to crumble. A new generation questioned authority and tradition, championing personal freedom, social tolerance, and individual expression. This led to the famously liberal policies for which the Netherlands is known today, including the legalization of euthanasia and same-sex marriage, and a pragmatic approach to drug policy. Amsterdam, in particular, became a haven for counterculture and a beacon for progressive values, reinforcing the nation's reputation as one of the most open and forward-thinking societies in the world. Today, the Netherlands stands as a modern, innovative, and prosperous nation. It is a world leader in agriculture, logistics, and creative industries, with the Port of Rotterdam serving as a vital gateway to Europe. The Dutch continue to export their unparalleled knowledge of water management, helping other countries around the globe adapt to environmental challenges. The long journey from the prehistoric marshes to the high-tech present is a story of incredible persistence. It is the story of a people who, faced with the constant threat of being swallowed by the sea, not only survived but learned to master the elements, building a thriving, tolerant, and inventive society on land they created themselves. The Dutch spirit is one of turning challenges into strengths, a lesson forged over centuries of living with water.